Hello and welcome to Middle East Matters here on France 24. Coming up in this week's show, militant minors, young boys are being forced to fight for the Islamic State group in Iraq, or reporters take us to meet two young cousins who managed to escape. Tensions between traditional allies, the US and Israel, flare up as negotiations for a nuclear deal with Tehran continue. And a wedding to avoid prison. A law in Jordan means that rapists who marry their victims don't go to jail. We get the victim's view. We're going to start this edition in Iraq, where little boys are being sent to the front lines. Seen by the Islamic State group as devil worshippers and not even fit to convert to Islam, the Yazidi community has been the target of jihadists for many months already. Hundreds of them have been kidnapped, tortured and killed. And young boys brought into the ranks of radical fighters. Mohammed Ibrahim Salih and Julia Seeger take us to meet two young cousins who managed to escape.
Looking back on what could have been their future, Habib and Faraj were lucky enough to escape from the Islamic State organization after the group captured them with other family members. But not everyone was that lucky.
Do you know any of them?
Yes. This is Rareb, son of Hussein Kalo. I used to go to school with him. And this is Majdal, son of Khalid Semi.
Some of their friends have been forcefully enrolled as child soldiers to fight for the Islamic State organization. And they regularly appear in propaganda videos.
And this is the new generation that will conquer Rome with the help of God. This generation will be the foundation for the Islamic State organization.
The two cousins are members of the Yazidi community who practice an ancient Mesopotamian religion. They were captured when jihadists attacked their village in northern Iraq last August. First Faraj and then Habib 2 days later, but they eventually managed to escape at nightfall with their mother. Smugglers then took them to Dohuk in Iraq's Kurdistan region. 12-year-old Faraj was spared military drilling for being too frail, but he was forced to attend ideological training.
They put the boys in a room and forced us to read and memorize the Quran. They beat me a few times because I did not do it well.
Habib is 14 and was left with no other choice than to train militarily. But jihadists soon decided he wasn't fit for the job.
Yes. They gave us guns, AK-47s and grenades. I trained for a few days. They ordered us to shoot at a target, but my hands were shaking and I couldn't hit it. So they said I couldn't be a militant.
Many Yazidi boys as young as 10 years old are being trained to fight for the Islamic State organization. Not only are they taken away, they could even be used to fight against their own community. And while Yazidi men are tortured and executed, Yazidi women and girls are sold into slavery.
Meanwhile, in fighting on the ground, some 30,000 troops backed up by aircraft are battling to take back Tikrit from the Islamic State group. The hometown of Saddam Hussein fell to the jihadists last summer. Roadside bombs slow the Iraqi forces' advance, but commanders hopes the operation would be a success and a step towards retaking the Islamists' main hub of Mosul. Turning now to a speech that has caused controversy, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was invited by Republicans to talk at Congress, much to the ire of Democratic lawmakers. The invite in itself ruffling feathers, but the main message also increased tensions between the traditional allies, the US and Israel. Netanyahu insists that Tehran threatens Israel's existence and opposes any deal with Iran. US negotiators, meanwhile, had voiced optimism that progress was possible in a nuclear deal. Shirley Sitbon takes us through where the talks are this week.
When explained by Iran's foreign minister, the nuclear deal he's negotiating seems simple.
The objective of the deal is to make sure that the Iranian nuclear program is exclusively peaceful and at the same time to ensure that all sanctions are lifted.
The P5+1 want an insight into Iran's nuclear facilities, and they want the country to renounce some of the capacities it has now. In exchange, they're willing to gradually lift sanctions which have crippled Iran's economy. But Iranian authorities want all sanctions to be lifted immediately and say they won't renounce to any of their country's capacities.
They say they have no reason to go backwards. They accept inspections but refuse to dismantle their installations.
U.S. President Barack Obama has pushed for the deal, saying it's the only way to keep Iran from developing nuclear weapons.
The deal that we're trying to negotiate is to make sure that there's at least a year between us seeing them try to get a nuclear weapon and them actually being able to obtain one. That ensures us that we can take military action to stop them.
But according to the IAEA, Iran is reluctant to cooperate.
Unfortunately, pace of clarification is slow. So I need to keep on talking to them, if necessary, at a higher level.
In the U.S., some say no deal should be signed. Congress could vote new sanctions against the Iranian regime at the risk of jeopardizing talks. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu came to Washington to criticize negotiations.
Iran envelops the entire world with its tentacles of terror. This is what Iran is doing now without nuclear weapons. Imagine what Iran would do with nuclear weapons.
There are obstacles in the U.S., Iran, and in other states that want to keep Iran under sanctions. Some say a deal may not come through. Negotiators have until the end of the month to prove the forecasts wrong.
A wedding can mean avoiding a prison sentence for rape. It's a law that persists in Jordan. Article 308 means rapists who marry their victims can escape 15 years behind bars for the crime. A recent survey showed that more than half of the population are in favour of the rule, seeing it as a way to protect women and their honour. Our reporters Gail Sunderland, Julian Fouchette and Josh Fardy get the victim's view.
In this park in Amman, a 31-year-old Jordanian woman has agreed to meet us. She prefers to remain anonymous. Her life stopped the day her boss drugged and raped her.
When I woke up, it was 7 in the evening, and I was wondering what had happened to me. He said it was really serious, but that he'd make it all okay. He brought me a piece of paper. It was a marriage contract.
Using Article 308, the attacker escaped a 15-year sentence by marrying her. A life of hell behind closed doors had just started for this woman, forced to become the spouse of her own rapist.
After that, he raped me over and over again, and he was never punished for it. He was never sent to jail. The authorities only detained him once so he would marry me. That's it. Just to get married, and that was it.
After 4 months, she filed for divorce and ran away to her parents' house. Her aggressor has started a new life. Each year, less than 300 women dare to report rape in Jordan. Many of them seek the services of this lawyer, but most of the time, the prosecution ends with a wedding.
During the investigation, or even if he's already been sent to jail, he can still benefit from this article. The family of the rapist goes to the family of the victim and offers a settlement in line with the culture and values. Most victims agree to it and sign the legal contract.
For the ones who get pregnant after being abused, the only way to keep their child is to marry the father. The lawyer takes us to one of her clients. This young woman gave birth to a boy after being raped by 2 strangers. Her son was taken away from her at birth.
If I had wanted to keep my baby, I would have had to get married. But I could never have done so. It would have been impossible because I was never able to identify my rapists. So I lost my child. I lost my baby.
Why isn't there a law that allows women to keep their children without marrying their rapist?
There are no laws, there's only tradition, a culture. The law does not allow women with children to live without a husband, to live unmarried.
While other Muslim countries like Morocco have rejected similar laws, Article 308 still finds support in over half the population of Jordan.
We were looking earlier in this edition at the human cost of war. There is also very often the cost to historical architecture and heritage. The United Nations estimates that some 300 sites have been destroyed over the last 3 years in Syria. One of them, Palmyra, dates back to the 1st and 2nd century. It was once one of the most important cultural centres of the world. Phoebe Lanzer-Wood shows us what's left.
Tourists used to flock there in their masses, but nowadays this oasis in the heart of the Syrian desert can only be reached under military escort. Said to have been built by Solomon, the city of Palmyra is most famous for its Roman colonnade. But the ancient site has been ravaged by years of conflict and recently saw yet another battle between the Syrian army and rebels.
You can see the damage here. Some of the columns have been hit by rockets. And a shell hit this one. It broke into several pieces, which then fell to the ground.
This spectacular temple front was also destroyed by mortar fire. The director of the site was astonished when he was allowed to return.
When I saw what had happened, I collapsed and burst into tears. This is a heritage site that belongs not only to Syria, but to the whole world. Our mission is to protect what we have been given.
But the majority of the damage done hasn't been caused by arms, but by pillaging. Looters here took advantage of destroyed tombs and stole paintings and statues that had been stored for centuries. The director, loyal to Assad, says this video shows rebel fighters digging out a relic. According to the UN, the army has also caused extensive damage by building a new road through the ancient site.
Well, many priceless artefacts have also been destroyed in Iraq, most recently in Mosul. But some joy and pride came back to Baghdad this week as the National Museum reopened its doors for the first time in 12 years. It was ransacked following the fall of Saddam Hussein back in 2003. 15,000 pieces were taken. 1/5 of them have now been recovered and are once again on display. That's where we're going to leave it for this week. Do take care and see you again next time.